morning, it's February 6th, and this is To My Liberal Friends. If you've been paying attention to the news lately, you'll know the Trump administration has shut down the USAID offices. The U.S. Agency for International Development was initiated by President John F. Kennedy in 1961. Its goal is to help other nations around the world and to further the goals of the United States in its foreign policy. Well, somewhere along the way, things went sideways, and Republicans believe that USAID has become a $42 billion slush fund for liberal causes with very little oversight. Well, the Democrats are up in arms, but they fail to mention that the person currently running USAID is Samantha Powers, a former Obama official who is far to the left of the current administration. She served as UN ambassador under Obama. Biden kept her on and put her at the agency. She's the one allowing some of the more egregious grants to be handed out. And I'll be the first one to say there are some things funded by USAID that are worthy and should continue to be funded. And Secretary Rubio has made it clear that those will continue. But there are also a lot of grants that seem totally political based on the politics of the person within the agency awarding the grant. USAID, it's not a household acronym, provides money to various countries and non-governmental organizations. The agency spends money to around 130 countries, including Ukraine, Yemen, Afghanistan, and Syria. That's according to the Congressional Research Service. In 2023, the agency managed just over $40 billion and no fewer than 10,000 employees. Don't know how it takes 10,000 employees there. The ostensible goal is to make friends and influence countries in American interests. The agency in the Biden years supported electric vehicles in Vietnam, a transgender clinic in India, a Serbian LGBTQ group called Grupta Elazia, received $1.5 million to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplace and business communities. Now, there are many other examples, but how do these advance the interests of the U.S. government and our foreign policy? These grants are dumb and wasteful, but some USAID spending may undermine U.S. interests. An analysis by the Middle East Forum said $164 million of the agency's money has supported radical organizations around the world, and $122 million of that was going to groups aligned with foreign terrorist organizations. According to the report, USAID has given millions of dollars to organizations directly in Gaza controlled by Hamas, and the recipients of the money have, quote, called for the lands to be cleansed from the impurity of the Jews, end quote. The Middle East Forum notes that the money often flows to anti-American groups through intermediary recipients that fail to vet their local partners. That's the NGOs that just pass out the money. Of course, the Democrats and the liberals, as I said, are up in arms. How dare Trump let someone like Elon Musk interfere in a government agency that Congress has funded? Secretary of State Marco Rubio made it clear they're not shutting down all the aid programs, but they're taking a long look at some of the grants that do nothing to advance U.S. foreign policy. Over on the left, they're making the case that Trump does not have the authority to shut down the agency. The argument is that Congress appropriated the money to the agency, and only Congress can cancel those funds. And that's going to be debatable. They cite the 2024 Foreign Appropriations Act that explicitly prohibited a reorganization, redesign, or elimination of USAID without congressional participation. And this has been repeated multiple times by Democratic members in the House and Senate, and ultimately the courts will have to decide. But here's a complicating factor. The 1998 law that established USAID stated that, quote, the administrator of the Agency for International Development shall report to and be under the direct authority and foreign policy guidance of the Secretary of State, end quote. That means that USAID isn't a fully independent agency and would violate the terms of its authorizing legislation if it refused to accept the Secretary's guidance. And Rubio told reporters with him on a trip to Latin America that very clear that USAID is, quote, a completely unresponsive agency, end quote. He used his experience in the Senate when he stated that USAID is, quote, is supposed to respond to the policy directives with the State Department and refused to do so, end quote. And this is key in this argument. USAID has to follow the directives of the leadership within the State Department. If this alleged unresponsiveness continues, Mr. Rubio would have the authority to fire non-compliant officials and seek to replace them with people that respect his statutory authority. And that's exactly what I believe the Trump administration is attempting to do. I believe they're temporarily shutting down the agency to do a full evaluation of what the agency is funding and how it comports with their foreign policy goals. I believe that within a short time, USAID will be reopened with a clearly stated goal and guidance from the State Department. So Democrats come out and yell and scream that Musk is an unelected official that should not be able to do things. They seem to have forgotten how the government works. There are numerous people heading up small agencies that are appointed by the president. no matter who's in the White House, and Trump has appointed Musk. Trump was elected by the people, and that gives him the right to make such appointments. It's interesting that Democrats have focused their anger on Musk and not Trump. They must view him as a weak link in the hierarchy of the administration. He certainly has been front and center on several policy decisions, and he seems intent on using his authority within the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, to try and find examples of waste in federal government. God knows there's a lot of them. I know that might sound like heresy to all of the avid Trump supporters, but there might come a time when Elon Musk might have to leave Washington because he's too much of a lightning rod. If it comes, it will be sometime in the fall or early next year, in my opinion. Vivek Ramaswamy has already left under the guise of getting run for governor of Ohio, but there was friction between these two super egos, and if Musk gets too much credit, there might be friction between he and Trump. One suggestion has been forward is to have USAID be wholly absorbed into the State Department. That would certainly force the agency to be more responsive to the goals of any administration. That might be the best solution, and if there was a Democratic administration, then Democrats on Capitol Hill would be supportive. Republicans would be supportive of an effort for the current administration. Since it appears it's depending on which parties in the White House would dictate support for such a move, I think it actually might be the best solution. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.